Buongiorno a tutti, benvenuti. Stiamo per iniziare l'evento. Aspettiamo ancora qualche minuto e poi dopo anticipo che switcherò in inglese per diciamo, aprire l'evento e visto che la prima sessione sarà internazionale in lingua inglese. Ci aspettiamo circa un centinaio di partecipanti, vedo che stanno salendo, siamo quasi a 50, quindi aspetterei ancora qualche minuto prima di dare l'avvio alla prima sessione. Appena ho detto che i partecipanti stanno aumentando, si sono fermati e quindi siamo... They stopped at 46 participants anyway. We just wait few seconds, then we start officially. Ok, come dicevo prima, appunto, stiamo aspettando ancora pochi secondi, pochi minuti per dare l'avvio ufficiale, perché sappiamo che ci sono state oltre 1000 registrazioni per tutto l'evento, ce n'erano circa 100 per questa sessione, quindi aspettiamo ancora qualche secondo e poi partiremo. Ok, direi che uso i miei 5 minuti, va bene Shiva, Federico, uso i miei 5 minuti appunto di saluti anche così, per dare la possibilità ad altri partecipanti che vedo stanno arrivando di aderire. Passo appunto in inglese per i saluti e per l'introduzione. Good morning and welcome to everyone. My name is Giuseppe Conti. I'm the General Director of a University Superior School in Pavia and Chairman of NETVAL. NETVAL is the National Association of Technology Transfer Offices. We have almost 100, so 98 shareholders among university, public research body, and research hospitals. So we represent more or less 90% of the total system of the research and technology transfer in Italy. Let me thank institutionally our great partner, the National Patent and Trademark Office, the Italian National Patent and Trademark Office within the Ministry of Economy and Development, and the Politecnico di Torino for actively support each steps of the whole process that just led to the TechShare Day. And personally, let me thank people within these organizations like Francesco, Loredana, Shiva, all NETVAL team, Daniela, Federico, Gloria, and so on. But let me say many thanks to the speakers, the great speakers, especially for the first and the next session. So Jeff, Christophe, and Laura, we got acquainted a couple of years ago within the ASTP annual conference meeting, when we were able to act physically. We hope for the future. We hope for the future, of course. And let me thank finally, but really important, the participants, attendees, now more than 50, because we reached a great, let me say, signals of potential success of this event, because we reached more than 1,000 booking for the participation. So a few words, because I don't want to waste time for the following sessions. TechShare Day is a 9-webinar event, but not only. Shiva will go deeply in detail about all the organization of all these 3 days. is based on knowledge share platform, which is a project funded by the national government, especially from the National Patent and Trademark Office, together with Politecnico di Torino for the technical support, where you can find more than 1,500 patented technologies from the public research bodies. Let me say, Texture Day is going to face with the most important challenges of our future perfectly aligned with the issues cited in the Next Generation Europe plan. So I think we can touch very, very critical points. Let's start. I see, yeah, participants are increasing. Wonderful. So let's start with the initial section, which is something different. It's not a technical or vertical section from specific disciplines, but it's quite different because it's touching and will touch cross team like academia and industry relationships that are quite important for our job. That is something dynamic and still to be, let me say, every day. So many thanks again. Enjoy the event. I leave the floor to Shiva and then to Loredana Guglielmetti for the first speaker. Enjoy.
Okay. Thank you very much, Giuseppe. I think maybe Loredana will speak later about their research, the research they made on the environmentally sound technologies. Probably wanted to spend just a couple of words bringing our the greetings from also Francesco Morgia. So Loredana, if you want to take the floor, we know you are experimenting some problem with the camera, but we know we can hear you very well. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Shiva. Thank you, Giuseppe. Good morning to all. On behalf of the Italian Patent and Trademark Office, Texture Day is an event organized in the framework of a long collaboration between our office and NETVAL and the Italian university and research institutions. We pay a special attention to IP produced by universities and research institutions, to their exploitation and to all the processes of technology transfer. Many of our projects are aimed at supporting this process of technology transfer. I congratulate the organizers for the hard-working days, and I take this opportunity to welcome all the participants and also all the speakers in the different webinars who will exchange ideas and views on this important topic of discussion as the environmentally sound technologies. Thank you and enjoy the event.
Great. Thank you very much, Loredana. I will leave you the floor again in a few minutes, but and thanks, of course, to our president, Giuseppe, for being here with us to open the event. It's an event in which we believe much, so we have great expectation, and from the preliminary signals we have about the number of people who book their seats, their virtual seats, we are confident that it will be some fun and hopefully interesting. I will just share my screen now I have a double screen, which means that, okay, seems it works on the first attempt, and I just launched my presentation. Okay, I will just introduce you briefly to Knowledge Share, which is our patent platform, which is what brings us here, and guide you very, very quickly through the event platform, which is kind of variegated. And so I want to share with you the most important features of the platform so that any one of the participants will be able to take the most from this experience. So, of course, as the most of you know, we started, everything started from Knowledge Share. Knowledge Share is a digital public platform run by Netval in close collaboration with the the Italian Patent and Trademark Office, as Giuseppe already explained. It is completely free of access, and through it, it is possible to access the marketing briefs related to more than 1,500 patented technologies. And this number is increasing on a, I would say, weekly basis. So stay tuned to see how it evolve. And those technologies have been developed by more than 80 different Italian universities, research centers, and what in Italian we call IRCCS, which in English I would translate in the most simplistic way as clinical research hospitals. And this platform gives to the audience the possibility of making direct contact with the research teams. I won't spend too much time talking about Knowledge Share, because I hope at this point the most of you really know it very well, and because you can just go and browse it directly and see how it is made. What is important to say is that at the end of last year, what happened was that our patent platform, whose payoff is we share knowledge, went technology tech share day. That means, which is the place where where innovators meet inventors. This is the payoff of the event. That means that we basically created a new layer over the first one, which is the platform to show the patents, which is also a virtual place. It used to be a physical one, but in these current times, as all the rest, it became a virtual place where the people can meet together and really share more knowledge about the technologies that can be found on Knowledge Share. So what is actually TSD? Is a digital event catalyzing meetings between the world of research and innovation with that of stakeholders. All the different kinds of stakeholders that can be interested in technological innovation. Therefore, of course, investors, of course, companies, but single persons, innovators who are just curious, who want to understand what's happening around there. People having some spare time, they don't know to do what to do with it, and whoever is interested in understanding more what's happening inside the academic labs at the Italian level for the moment, but hopefully in the future also with a wider community of participants, in which the challenges and the patented technologies linked to specific sectors are explored, thanks to the 9 different webinars and the Spotlight technology wall of in-depth technical briefs. Okay, so these are the main features of the event, which are summarized here, that I will show you in a minute. We are at the 2nd edition. We collected over the 2 editions more than 130 tech plus, and we'll see what it does mean. We have had more than 500 speakers and opinion leaders involved, with more than 2,000 attendees. Actually, this is just a foresight, because it counts the number of pre-registered people for this event. We'll see at the end what happened. The theme of of this year edition of TechShare Day is toward sustainable development. which is also a way of using differently the three letters, no, that are part of our logo. Tech Share Day, TSD, has been renewed for this specific edition with the payoff towards sustainable development, because this edition is dedicated to environmentally sound technologies, which are those kind of technologies that try to overcome the current sustainability challenges, trying to offering alternative solutions with low or zero impact on the environment, and less polluting and or more efficient technological solution to cope with our everyday lives or needs in our lives. What are the event objectives? Are support the growth of the green economy, which is one pillar of the public investment policies on a global scale nowadays, catalyze the technology transfer of clean technologies or climate technologies, as today someone likes to call them. There is a big discussion now because, as many of you know, the clean technologies bubble somehow burned around the year 2010, and now there are a lot of people who are not really confident with talking about clean technologies anymore, because somehow it recalls a bad moment in a field of investment. But you know, that's the point. We can call them however we like, but we all know now that we have to manage with to cope with our environmental issues, and to do it very quickly. So this is one of the reasons because this edition of the Tech Share Day decided to focus on this kind of technologies. And of course, we want to create opportunities of investment for the technologies developed by our universities, research centers, and hospitals. Okay, so now just let's have a direct look to our platform. I will just move here my browser window. You should see here the this is the homepage of the event platform that you will find whenever you go on techshareday.com, or you click on the other hyperlinks you can find around. There are some description of the event. You can just scroll down, and the first important element you see is the agenda of the event. Here you have this carousel that allows you to see the 9 different webinars which have been organized over these 3 days. All of them are in the different timing in the way to make all the people able to attend any one of them. Then we have, and we will see better what's inside in a minute. Then we have the carousel about our opinion leader. You can, this is our Loredana who is here with us, and you cannot see her, so I take the opportunity to show you her bio. You can just click on the button. You can see, you know, the bio of the specific speaker. You can see the details of when that person will speak in our webinar, and in the case it is applicable, like in mine, you will also have the opportunity to directly go to the LinkedIn page of that specific person. And you can just see all of them here. And then we have the block of the technologies under the spotlight. What are technologies under the spotlights? They are technologies, a selection of technologies taken from the bigger cluster of all the environmentally sound related technologies that you can find on Knowledge Share, but this is just a selection where we have worked more on them, and we have created specific content. So if you, whenever you click on a technology under the spotlight, you are redirected to the detail of that specific technologies, where you will find, in many of them, you will find a video which will give you a brief of the technologies directly from the inventors, and you will find some pictures, some details, and a description of that innovation in terms of market, problem addressed, current technology limitation, killer application, the solution, advantages, and the roadmap for the development. And also, I will come back to this pop-up later, and also a roadmap, and also an indication of the current state of maturity expressed in terms of technology readiness level of that specific technologies. And of course, you will see the inventor, the team of researchers who have worked on that technology. One new feature of the platform of this year is this pop-up that just shown up before, which you can reach also clicking on this button, review the technology, which offer to anyone who is browsing on this specific technology the opportunity to give a feedback. It's a very simple thumb up or thumb down feedback, where you can just say, okay, I like this one, or no, I don't like it. And as soon as you say, yes, I like it, and you send the feedback, the system will immediately suggest you to fill in a form if to give some more details if you like, but basically you are not allowed. You just need to put the name of your company, because the other details are already there because you are hopefully registered on the platform. And as soon as you will send your feedback, the system, you also have to put a number, which it doesn't like because I have the international prefix, and you just send it, and the system will send direct feedback to these people down here, the inventors of the specific technologies, telling them that someone have expressed an interest for their technologies. Okay. Otherwise, if and of course it's not going to work on these technologies anymore because I already used my feedback attempt this time. If I go on another one and I show you that if I give a negative feedback, the system will just suggest me to say why I didn't like this technology, and I can give some motivation. So this is the main part of interaction about the technologies under the spotlight, which are, of course, the heart of our event and our platform. And then we have a section with the logos of our partner that we thanks a lot, of course. And at the very end, we have the full list of technologies taken from Knowledge Share, which are somehow related to the environmentally sound technologies field. Back to the top of this page, I just want to show you about the single webinar. So if I take any single one of this one, which I find of interest, I click on them and I am redirected to the specific webinar page where I can just participate whenever it will start. So this is not the right time, of course, because this will be at 2. And I have a description. I have, again, a list of the speakers who are taking part to that specific webinar. And here I can see the technologies. I don't know why the system changed from English to Italian, but I can go back to the English version. All the platform is in the 2 languages. And again, I'm seeing here the technologies under the spotlight, which are specifically related to this specific webinar. And this is the very same experience that I will have when I join the streaming of the webinar. Of course, it's not here at the moment because it doesn't started. I will have the opportunity to follow the webinar here, like you are doing at this moment. I still have an abstract here, and I will see the technologies under the spotlight so that I can listen to the people speaking and also browsing some of their technologies. Okay, I don't want to waste too much of your time, but I just wanted to really make you understand deeply how you can interact with our platform and take the most from our event. So back to my slides. I think I already introduced you our new feature, which is the feedback one for the technologies under the spotlight. I hope I've been clear enough. If you have any specific question about this way of interaction with the platform, please do write them in the chat, and I can eventually try to take them right now or in a minute. And yeah, just a very straightforward suggestion for you. Enjoy your TSD 2021. and these are some of our contacts. You can reach us, but you know all of them. I will stop my screen sharing, and as I don't see any question about the platform for the moment, I think we can move forward. Giuseppe.
Thank you very much, Shiva. Quite clear and exhaustive presentation of all the features and how these 3 days will going on. Just to leave the floor to Loredana and for having her presentation. And so once again, enjoy the meeting. Please, Loredana.
Okay, Loredana, I'm giving you the presenter rights, so you will be able to share your screen with us.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Giuseppe. Thank you, Shiva. And I will have a brief presentation of a work carried out at the Italian Patent Office on green patents in Italy, or environmentally sound technologies. As a whole, you know, supporting and promoting environmental sustainable technologies has become a key priority for national and European policies, but is also key issues of international cooperation. Actually, at the international level, the definition of environmentally sound technologies was firstly used and identified in the framework of the United Nations Convention on Climate Change at the beginning of the 90s. The environmentally sound technologies are a wide range, wide set of technologies and techniques able to reduce environmental damages directly, or also by improving environmental performance of other technologies. ESTs range from processes and materials that generate fewer harmful substances to techniques to recover the harmful substances before discharging, or also the processes of reuse of waste or production residues. To study and to measure the innovation trend in EST, patent data are available indicators, because patents in particular represent one of the most important means to stimulate, protect, promote technological innovation. For this reason, we use patent database as a tool for the analysis of ESTs. But the identification of inventions regarding sustainable technologies is extremely complex. Patent classification systems are designed to identify technologies, but categorizing the patents according to their technical features, not according to the purpose or the invention or the achievable results. Thus, patents in green technologies are searched and studied through IPC, the International Patent Classification Systems, with complementary methods such as keywords, analysis on the description, test searches, etc. Different methodologies have been implemented by important patent international institutions. For example, the European Patent Office use the CPC, the Cooperative Patent Classification, with an added classification scheme that is the YO2 scheme that identifies the climate change mitigation technologies, that is the technologies that cope with the greenhouse emissions. But there are also the OECD that has implemented a methodology based also on classifications and keywords. And the WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, that has implemented that methodology through the IPC expert, and has implemented a tool that is the IPC Green Inventory, that is implemented for the search and retrieval of patent documents related to environmentally sound technologies. It's based on IPC classification and contains topics each linked to relevant IPC symbols to identify these technologies. There are 200 items because ESTs are scattered into a very wide range of IPC classes. The WIPO experts have created a sort of catalog of IPC classes that are grouped in 7 major subject areas. You can see they are alternative energy production, transportation, energy conservation, waste management, agriculture and forestry, administrative, regulatory or design aspects, and nuclear power generation. Each of these subject areas can be subdivided in sub-areas with in more detail. The Italian Patent Office has conducted an analysis on Italian patents, adopting the IPC, the methodology of the IPC Green Inventory. And this choice is due to the fact that we classify national patent application with the IPC, with the International Patent Classification. This analysis that you can see on my screen was published in December 2020, and this study explores Italian environmentally sound technologies from the patent perspective and highlights trends of more or less the last decade, or patent application, Italian patent application of the last decade, more or less. It is a statistical analysis that has been implemented with data extracted from the official online register of national patent applications, in particular on patent application filed from 2009 to 2018. There are tables and graphs, and the whole analysis is available both in English and in Italian on the IPTO website and on the WIPO Green News section. Just to mention a few data, on average, the environmentally sound technologies are 9.6% of the total patent application in Italy, and that witnessed an important activity of Italian companies and inventors in the green sector, because according to the OECD, on a global scale, the average of green patents is between 5 and 10% of the total patents filed. on a global scale. And so we have registered positive increasing trends over the years, especially since 2016. It is worth outlining that the three main areas cover more than 60% of Italian green patents. They are alternative energy, production, waste management, and energy conservation. Each of the main areas can be analyzed more in depth. For example, within alternative energy, the solar energy has the preeminence over the geothermal energy or biofuel. In the published study, you can read also some more details. Here you are the details in the main areas. From a patent point of view, we can notice a good performance of Italy in the environmental sound technologies. But these technologies, though patented to carry on changes, should be effectively deployed and used. The academic, the university play an important role in developing these technologies. And I'm sure the important results will be illustrated and discussed further today and in the next days during this section day. Thank you. You can see the whole analysis on the Italian Patent Office website. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, Loredana, thank you very much. It's really interesting. It's a deep dive into some of our data, and I think it's very interesting to have this kind of data to set the ground at the very beginning of this green revolution we are facing. So it will be interesting in years to come to see how this data will evolve, and if Italy will keep the pace with the rest of the world, or eventually will sign the way.
Yes, we intend to continue to inspect these technologies from a patent point of view, of course.
Yes, very well, very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so now I think we can ask to our colleagues from ASTP to switch on their cameras to begin. Hello, Laura. Hello, Jeff. And hello, Chris, which we are not already seeing, but I know is coming. Hello, Chris. Okay, so as Giuseppe told at the beginning of this session, we are very glad we've been able to jointly set up this session with ASTP. I think everybody knows ASTP, but I am sure Laura will have the opportunity to give a brief introduction, so I don't want to steal her role. But we are, as Netval, we really believe in the importance and opportunity to have an exchange across the border at the international level. Because I think really the two levels of aggregation are important. You need to associate with your national colleagues, because with them we share the same legal environment, the same problems that probably from UK or France they wouldn't believe or understand. but and I'm sure it's pretty much the same in the other countries somehow, but it is still very important to have the opportunity to share our experience and our problems with other colleagues from other countries, because it really makes all of us growing quicker and better. So I've been a promoter of this collaboration. We are collaborating, I would say, increasingly with ASTP. Netval associates can benefit from discounted rates for being also member of ASTP, thanks to an agreement we've been made between the two associations. And so it's really a pleasure to be here with you. I know that Jeff and Christophe will give us very wise and experienced advice on how to manage academia industry collaboration. So I will leave the ground to Laura, who is the General Director of ASTP, who will moderate this session, but I will be here to bother you with some Italian question.
Perfect. Thanks, thank you so much, Shiva. Thank you for all your colleagues as well who've been organising this great day. I think the Tech Share event that I just found out about a few months ago when you ran one last year, I think really exciting. So I think as ASTP, we're delighted to be invited to join you. And yeah, absolutely echo what you said, Shiva. We're very much about connecting people, and although, as you say, there are national challenges which are particular to the environment of knowledge transfer, tech transfer in each country, I think we all recognise that, in fact, on the one hand, academic endeavour, and on the other hand, industrial goals are very similar globally, which means that for those of us at the interface of these two worlds, which is essentially where both the Netval community and our ASTP membership sits, then there's really an awful lot that we can learn, as well as having fun and really exchanging inspirational experiences and ideas of how to address the many challenges of helping these two worlds work well together, find one another, and so on. And that's certainly from a trans-border point of view what ASTP has been doing for many, many years. I think we're just over 20 years old. And I think if I look at my colleagues on the panel, the real speakers this morning, Jeff will remember the very early days of coming together with colleagues who were dealing with similar challenges and enjoying the similar joys that is involved in being a knowledge transfer professional. And I think that idea of individuals coming together and saying, what can we do, how can we share, has been inspirational. And I also noticed, interestingly, that when Shiva asked us at ASTP if we would like to help participate and help contribute to this opening session, when I put the call out to our illustrious community, and Jeff and Christophe were kind of first over the goal, was really good. And I'm just thinking about it in terms of the dynamics between Netval and ASTP, being this transnational unit. Actually, the people I'm about to introduce, both Jeff and Christophe, are former presidents of their own national associations. So Jeff in Practice Oral in the UK, and Christophe of the Réseau Curie in France. So actually they understand and obviously may have a moment to also share their own experiences of ASTP and how the dynamics fit between the national and transnational organisations. However, we have some really fun times, I think, ahead of us in the next hour or so, where both Jeff and Christophe are going to share, as Shiva said, many words of wisdom and lots of experience. So I would just like to briefly just reinforce the fact that between Netval and ASTP we have this great alliance, and I think both organisations are extremely creative in the kind of things that they like to organise and invent and do together. So, you know, as well as welcoming comments on the session content this morning, always open. Our email addresses on the presentations, always suggestions or ideas that people would like either ASTP to do or how to become more involved. I think we've already successfully, shall I say, recruited quite some Italian volunteers who are super active in the different committees. The Professional Development Committee, for example, that Jeff has been a long-standing founder and driver in. Our Professional Development Committee design and deliver the training courses that ASTP takes across Europe. So we have some Italian people there, very busy, which is wonderful. Laura Spinardi springs to mind. So that's really great, but let's look forward to doing even more fun things together. So without further ado, I would like to just, first of all, briefly, you'll have seen on the links on the website, of course, for this event, you can read a little bit more detail about Jeff and Christophe. But for those of you too busy to click on the many links, just a brief overview. Jeff Skinner may well be known to some of you if you've in fact attended either training courses, masterclasses, conferences that have been run in the past by ASTP. Jeff, however, has also travelled as a lone trainer and engages in many other events, so not just with an ASTP hat on. He's very well-known speaker and I think one of the great evangelists of this world that we work in. So I think it's highly appropriate that in his professional career for many decades based in London, he's set up and driven all sorts of initiatives way back in the last 20 or 30 years from University College London, more recently at the London School of Economics, where he heads up.
Oh, London Business School. But anyway, almost there.
London Business School. Oh, sorry. Did I say London LSE? London Business School. LBS. I know. Acronym.
When I was at UCL, everybody used to say Imperial. I'm sure it's just to annoy me.
We live in a world of too many acronyms. Many apologies. But great, you're awake. You're great. Great. So that's the other thing we must announce. I think, as Giuseppe said at the start, this session is in English, but let's be honest here. There's a Scottish English, a French English, and only one real English presenting. So feel free in the comment section to tell us to slow down or add in your questions in that way as well. So Jeff, yes, from London Business School will be opening the floor with a really interesting overview of probably the most problematic, contentious, challenging set of topics that we ever encounter, whether we're on the University Research Centre side or are the industrial partners, and that is intellectual property. You know, how do we manage it? What are the issues? And yes, the good news from Jeff, I think he's going to share, is there are always solutions. When organisations and people want to work together, we always find solutions. So that's the key, the takeaway message, I think. But looking forward to an interesting discussion about all of that. And then Christophe Onaud, as I mentioned, is very much a French background, but since recently is now actually also a little bit transnational in the sense that he's now the director of partnerships and knowledge and technology transfer for the University of Luxembourg. So he brings also several countries' experience so far of the landscape, and he is going to take the topics which cover more how the relationship, once you've actually done the deal, once you've got partnership with an industrial partner, what are the challenges and what are the issues that are worth considering, and how to go about all of that. So between Jeff and Christophe, in the next half hour or so, we're obviously not going to touch base on every single aspect of creating the ideal and successful long-lasting collaborations, but we're certainly going to pick up some thorny points and share some ideas. And I think both Jeff and Christophe are going to mention some obviously real life cases or examples drawn from their wealth of experience. So what I would like to do as the moderator is quickly hand over the camera space to first of all Jeff and then Christophe. But in the meantime, as participants, what I really would welcome is for those of you who are playing around with the functionality buttons, there are two functions. There's a questions function and a chat function where you can post your comments and your questions. I think practically, I don't mind, I will monitor both, but what we'll do is we'll have Jeff give his presentation and then we'll have Christophe give his presentation, and then we're going to open the floor for all the remaining time, and we'll finish just before, I think, 12 noon. We have until just before 12 noon to give everybody time to move on to the next event in life. And what I will do is I will look in both the questions and the chat space and pull out any of your comments and issues that you would like us to talk about further. And then we'll give the floor to Jeff and Christophe to answer them. And I think that's about as much as I would like to say at this moment. I see the champing at the bit, Jeff. You are good to go.
No, not at all. I'm happy for you to go on and on. I was just making sure my slides worked before taking the floor.
It does. So, and I see the final comment, you are RTTP, which is also one of the interesting things about our training. I did that as well.
Shiva, you had your hand up. Does that mean you want to interrupt already?
You're on silent. We can't hear you, Shiva. You're
Sorry,
muted.
I was saying that I was just to ask Jeff to slow down before he starts.
Okay,
okay,
fine.
you get that in. Okay, and I will remember to speak more slowly, less Scottish.
I mean, as always, I am not speaking in English. I'm speaking in the lowest common denominator language across Europe, and I always have to remind that that's the actual thing. Okay, so let me just say,
you've escalated English to a highest common denominator, a version of it.
But anyway, there we go. And you have somebody from Portugal and somebody from Finland talking. What language do you expect them to use? Anyway, okay, so I say I'm Jeff Skinner. And one day, I was at University College London for several years, running the new ventures and the licensing group. And then one day, I was approached by Vice Provost or Dean or somebody and said, would I take over the research collaboration unit as well? And being a fool, I said that I would, and immediately got into that, even though I had very little insight into what the issues were with negotiating collaboration agreements. I knew they were tricky, but I didn't quite understand why. And I had to pretty quickly get to grasps with what were the major issues. Why was it that these agreements took often months to negotiate, frustrating on the one side the academic, and academics are dangerous people to frustrate or irritate in a career sense, and on the other side the industrial collaborator, because there was goodwill at the beginning, and then it was so easy for the research collaboration office to become the villain from both sides and seen to be holding things up somehow. And I'd always operated on the fact that I was a service provider. I wanted to be liked and respected for my professionalism. And there we are, I've just been handed a horrible problem, an office that everybody seemed to dislike. So I very quickly had to get down to why is this, and you know, it seems obvious to me now, but at the beginning I didn't know this, that it was always foreground intellectual property that seemed to be the stumbling block. Every other issue could be resolved, or at least was subsidiary. It was just this foreground intellectual property, and what was it? And that was so, you know, what was a solution? Was there a solution? This led me down a journey which ultimately resulted in my being part of a small 3 or 4 people, 3 or 4 university heads of collaboration who became a small group with counterparts from industry to try to figure this out and come up with once and for all solutions on behalf of the whole of the UK. So that's a kind of journey and thinking that I want to just talk about today. Even though it happened a long time ago, I don't think the fundamentals have really changed in all that time. So foreground intellectual property in a research collaboration, always the biggest issue. I came to that conclusion pretty quickly, and obviously you know that, anybody who's been in this knows that. And the issue is that the sponsor, the person with the money, usually just says, we want to own it. And that's it. You know, often you're dealing with a legal department that doesn't really know what the collaboration is about. They may be used to B2B collaborations or to contracting with consultancy companies where that is the norm, but they just say, well, this is our agreement and we own it all. And of course they have the power. They have the power because they have the money. And we have the expertise as well, but it seems that money talks, especially if you have an academic who desperately needs that money. And so you are in the unfortunate position where they have the power and the researcher is telling you to get on with it because they don't understand the issues. They don't actually understand that ultimately you are fighting on their behalf. They just think you're getting in the way. And so the result is that the university, knowledge transfer office, research collaboration office, often just compromises and says, okay, give in, cave in, let's get on with this and move on, and hope that it doesn't matter. And usually it doesn't matter because very little comes out in terms of formal intellectual property from these things. So it all gets forgotten about. But it can do, and this is where my tech transfer background came back out again, because I realized that in some of the deals that I've been trying to do in the past, license and spin out deals, the intellectual property that I was attempting to license had been compromised, had been made the muddy waters, because the same academic had worked on roughly the same project technology with a research partner. And when we did due diligence for the spin out, we found that these collaboration agreements, sometimes going back years, existed, and the terms of those collaboration agreements was that the sponsor owned the IP. And so we had to disclose this to the spin-out investor or the licensee, and that just caused problems. And we wish that the Research Collaboration Office all those years ago had been a little bit more careful about what they gave away, because they nibbled into what we wanted to give away later or license later. So this is the first thing. The logical starting point is around rights. We all know the term IPR. We don't recognize, except for the initial public offering acronym, we don't use intellectual property ownership, we use intellectual property rights, and that is the best place to start. And so what I tried to do, and this is a bit of an idealistic, I agree, but assume when you're going into the collaboration, you're going into the relationship as equals. Just because they have money doesn't mean they're got more power. You have to go in thinking, this is a trade. You want this, we want that. What are the terms? We're equals. It's just like any other consensual as opposed to coercive trade. And the first discussion should be, okay, what rights to the foreground? Forget the money, forget publication, forget confidentiality, forget law, forget everything else. What IP rights do you need to achieve your legitimate commercial objectives? What do you want to do with this? What do you need? And that will be a mixture of foreground and background rights, which is fine, what you have done and what you're going to do. Once you can come to that sort of agreement, and clearly you need to be talking at this point to somebody intelligent within the company who knows about the technology and the project, not just a lawyer. Fantastic lawyers, but ideally you'd make sure that the lawyer in their company, contracts person, was in close collaboration with the principal investigator on their side, so that they were having this intelligent discussion, and that you were able somehow to come to an accommodation. This is what you want, this is what you need, and it's usually a lot less than ownership. Once you've done that, you can say, okay, well, let's agree a price for the work, and let's agree any other sort of embedded royalty agreements, success fees, essentially, that you might like to give us if you eventually make money out of what we share with you. And never fall for the, well, it belongs to us anyway because we pay taxes that pays your salary. That is completely immaterial. And what do they need? Well, clearly they're putting money in, so they want something in return, but what is it that they want? And maybe it is a monopoly in the field. Notice they don't need ownership for that. They need the rights exclusively to them, maybe in a particular field. That isn't ownership. The freedom to use. They just want to make sure that anything that comes out of it, they can use in combination with their own background. They don't need ownership. Non-compete. Well, maybe we would be prepared to say that we wouldn't license to somebody in a similar area. Maybe we wouldn't, but at least the conversation's out on the table. Irrevocable rights. They don't want somehow one day to find that we've patented it and we're not giving them rights to the patent, or we're going to charge them lots and lots of money for the patent. They just want this assurance that they're going to be able to use it in the future. Sometimes they want the patent as a tradable or balance sheet asset. We found this, especially small companies, they want to own the patent so that they can include it as an asset in their company. Maybe that results in ownership, but then maybe they give us a lot of rights back again. Sometimes they just say, look, universities don't know how to file patents, don't know how to manage them, so give them to us, and that also can be achieved with a license rather than ownership. But in all these cases, It's about the rights first, and then you can decide who owns it afterwards. That is a consequence, almost a natural consequence of the rights you're actually giving, who should own it. Now, as I said, I went into a big conversation with, with government highlighted this as a major obstacle to collaboration between university and industry. Universities were saying it, industry was saying it, and so a big working group, well, actually a large working group was formed, and then within that a smaller core of people, of which I was one, was also formed, and we started talking about this and figuring out what was a good compromise. And this is where we came to. Both parties principally rely on their own background assets for competitive advantage. You don't need ownership in order to have, to be able to only produce a particular product or a particular service, because you have a pile of other assets in the background, from supply chains, through reputation, through your own background IP. You don't need complete ownership of what we have. You just don't need it. And they agreed that. What they needed was the freedom to use. They want, neither wants to be blocked to use the IP that might result in products from the research outcomes. And from our perspective, we don't want to be blocked from further future collaborations or spin-outs. That's essentially what the two parties agreed, that ultimately they wanted out of this. So usually the parties only need to retain freedom to use, and that became the baseline. Let us come to an agreement that says that out of the foreground, you have non-exclusive rights, royalty-free to use it, and so do we. And that should be enough for both of us. If you really do need exclusivity, then the IP clearly is valuable. It's clearly a core intellectual asset for you. So pay us some extra. But the baseline is going to be freedom to use. And if you need more, then we enter into a side license agreement as well. And this thinking, this fundamental little bit of thinking came into the form of these things called the Lambert agreements that still exist. I'll give you a link in the last slide. So in diagrams, this is it. Okay, I don't think I can actually use a cursor here. No, I can't. Okay, so on the left-hand side is the company background, everything that the company has built up over decades or centuries. Its brand, its supply chains, its other products, its sticky customers, everything that it has, background IP, know-how, technology, teams. On the right-hand side, you've got the university, the same. And then in the middle, you've got the new stuff they're going to create together, the foreground. And essentially what we were saying was, you have and you draw on all the left-hand side for your products and production. That's what you need. And you also need access to the foreground, but that's it. Don't need to own it. You just need to be able to use it. And the same, crucially for me, on the right-hand side. In any future spin-out that I did, I could exclusively license my background, but I knew that a byte hadn't been taken out of the foreground. I was able to tell any investor, you have exclusivity to this, and you have the ability to use the rest of the circle as well. And that eased my ability to license and to form spin-out companies hugely. And I hope that all my successors really appreciated the fact that now they were able to license without fear of finding that IP had been compromised. So that was it, basically. And it's all been complicated up again. People love complicating things into these huge, great agreements. But ultimately, that was it. Why don't we just agree to give to each other freedom to use foreground? And in most cases, that should be enough. These became the Lambert agreements. And here is the link to those. There's the link on the bottom actually is the most important one of the lot, which is the decision-making process. While we were doing this, a colleague of mine was charting the logic that we went through in order to decide who should actually own. And she, Catherine Quinn, wrote all this down, and it became this document, which is the link, which is this link, which I regard as being the most valuable document you can read when entering into the negotiation of a collaboration agreement, because it says if this then this, if this then this, if this then this, all the way down. So that's it. And Laura, that is all I am going to do now. I think I've taken my 15 exactly, and so if I stop sharing, I think I just have done, you can take the floor and give it to somebody else.
Indeed, great. Well, thanks, Jeff. I just love the fact that you gave that presentation, and you know, seems as though life has become linear, simple, mutual consent.
But it isn't. It isn't, you see, and this is why it's a provocation. This is why it's a provocation, in as much as there are holes in this, and I'm challenging the audience to say, hold on, it can't be as easy as that. So that's really where the discussion comes from later on.
Absolutely. So I totally echo that and invite the audience to start posting some questions around these holes. I mean, I think the principle we worked at, myself, my own background is that I've worked in this field also as a knowledge transfer professional since originally in Scotland, and then since 2006 when I moved to the Netherlands. So I've worked in 2 Scottish universities and a Dutch university, and you mentioned the Lambert consensus. I think in the Dutch landscape, we also went through something similar about 2006, 2007, with this great dialogue between key industrial players. Interestingly, both large companies, multinationals, but also the SMEs and the small and medium-sized companies, because the industry is not just a single, all have the same interests. So it was really interesting to have a sort of a 3-way discussion, which was big companies, small companies, and the university side. And although we don't have the Lambert equivalence exactly, we certainly also agreed quite some useful principles, and I know in many other countries this is happening. So as I say, I mean, some questions that spring to mind are, because I love your pictures are great. Pictures are great. There's an assumption here that actually we haven't really discussed whether there's an inventor from more than one party. So what's the role of joint inventorship translating to ownership and use rights? So anyway, I throw that out there. I'm not going to ask any specific questions, but I'm really interested. I know Jeff is absolutely desperate to have some nitty discussions and hear from the audience about how either these models have worked or would never work, or
absolutely right
in between. So thanks, Jeff. So now what I'd like to do is once again invite Christoph to switch on camera mic, and I think your presentation is also now visible. So Christoph, yes, maybe what you're going to talk about, I'll not preempt it too much, but clearly you're in more of the conversation space around where life has not been linear and simple. There have been challenges, issues and problems. So look forward to hearing your overview here, and then we will come back at the end and open the floor for lots more discussion and debate. So many thanks, Christoph. Floor is all yours.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Jeff, for this very clear and efficient presentation. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can, perfectly.
Okay, great. So Jeff gave us a very clear view on the major friction. I'm going to talk about more friction in this agreement. So obviously IP and money are the principal deal killers. When, of course, if you don't agree on who's going to pay for the research, I mean, the deal is not going to be to take place. When discussing with Jeff, I mean, we mentioned, of course, this question of confidentiality and publications, but I put there in gray because in most of the time, I mean, this can be solved. And I don't honestly remember in more than 25 years any deal not achieved because of this problem of confidentiality. So IP is really the issue, as Jeff said. I then recently an image, maybe I want to share it with you, to to me, I mean, all discussing about these IP issues is a bit just like you using in the car a security belt. Most of the time, it doesn't really. So it's not used, and fortunately in the car, but it can save your life. So you got to use it. And well, the thing in the car, it's quite quick and cheap to use a security belt. For research collaborations, as Jeff said, sometimes you can identify IP produced by the research collaboration. Sometimes you can have protected IP. In fewer occasions, you can license that, and in some fewer cases, you got a real application and real use of this IP. So it's most of the time useless, as said. I mean, this is usually not a problem, but contrary to the security belt, it's usually not quick and not cheap. Okay, but we've got to manage this because it's valuable. It's really necessary for the reasons explained by Jeff, and also it's a way of appreciating your work. And this is very often a key performance indicator for your activity. Okay, so that's for IP, and so Jeff told us about what happens before the deal is signed, and so before the contract. And I would like to talk about the rest, because there is actually life after we sign the contract. And generally speaking, we are more interested in getting in longer term relationship. Of course, we deal with a one shot. Okay, this is also live, it brings money, and that can be the start of a new partnership or not. But generally speaking, we are interested in having the relationship live and last. So I try to identify as a complement to the deal making killers, what could kill a partnership in the longer term. And I propose 5 items there. The first one is about what happens during the project. If you face a bad management of the project, it can be about decision making, changing the plans, reallocating resources, etc. If that goes wrong, this is not good. This is not good for the trust, and usually it will probably kill your partnership or your long-term partnership. The second issue, of course, is about IP management. If there are delays, you don't find the right pattern in the right time with the right inventors, this is also a killer. Obviously, if you don't deliver, I mean, if you are expecting outputs and you don't deliver them, this is going to be a very bad issue for your partnership. I'm not talking there about scientific results. I mean, scientific results can be good or bad, but the thing is, we have to deliver. If you promise to give your partner software, material, characterization, whatever, you have to stick to that, obviously. The fourth point is about how are you going to follow up on the project. If you want to build long-term partnership, you definitely have to follow up. And this is not only the responsibility of the researcher, to my point of view. I will give some examples about that. The last point is a bit specific. That's in the case of licensing. I got the feeling that when you got the licensee, it's a way, in a way, a partnership. I'm not talking there about short-term license or just a software module you are going to sell hundreds of times. I'm talking a real, maybe deep tech transfer, long-term, and in that case, license is a partnership. The main issue for licensing, what I did experience, is that you got to take into account before the negotiation and after the negotiation what real life is like. And that means what's going to happen and what can happen in the company, especially if it's a small company. So if the real life changes the conditions of the company economics, then you probably have to adapt and to be ready to adapt the license conditions. Of course, we have to accept that everyone is going to share the value, and so fairness is really important. And I've experienced cases where eventually the licensee would explain that the patent is useless, or things have changed, and in such a manner that they wouldn't share anymore the value created. and this is also a killer, obviously. Okay, the question here, I think, is what should be done by the Knowledge and Tech Transfer Office. Of course, before the signature, we are here to help this researcher, maybe to provide them with some potential partners, bring some economic intelligence and scientific watch, and obviously the negotiation. But afterwards, I think we should be more involved in the project management, obviously in the IP management and also in the follow-up. So we find there again the different points I showed before. IP management is obvious, but this is really the heart of the business of a TTO, and we have to demonstrate that we are skilled persons and that the researcher can trust us. Okay, this is very often a question of trust, demonstrating that you got skilled people and you are able to talk with companies on behalf of the researchers. Okay, and in the case of licensing, as I said before, we should be ready in the KT office to adapt the licensing to the reality, especially again for SMEs, startups, or spin-off. Just some examples about the project management. Well, usually it depends on the size of the project, of course, but you generally have two kind of operational ways to work with a company. Generally, you got a sort of strategic committee, a steering committee. You probably have it once or twice a year, and this is where the strategic decisions will be taken. But it's very possible to add in this committee some advice and advisors, and one of the advisors should come from the KTO. Well, generally speaking, in this steering committee, you find the C-level people, so the boss, I would say, the chief CEO or the rector or the president of the university or whatever. I strongly advise to add to this committee some KTO advisors with no vote rights and everything, but so they can be there for strategic decisions, because strategic includes IP. And for the operational committee, sometimes in contracts, you will find that in the prerogatives of this operational committee, you will find maybe the idea of industrial protection. And once again, it's not good to leave the researchers alone in this sort of committee. Personal feeling. Now, about the follow-up of the project. Well, the question is about how are we going to assess the project? What are the results? What are the next steps? And how do we build a long-term collaboration? And that includes, of course, looking for the right funding. So, and the funding is also related to the scale-up of the relationship. We can start with a very short-term and low-intensity relationship, just like consultancy or working with students, and then go to a more ambitious R&D projects, including PhD, looking for regional or more complex funding till the European level, and maybe go for very ambitious and long-term and big-sized projects like industrial chair or building a joint common research laboratory, etc. The third example is about licensing, and I will give you some very practical examples there. So the thing is just when things change, and usually you know that because the company lets you know that there is a problem, or they don't pay the royalties anymore, or the relationship goes worse and worse. So just sit around the table, okay, get a clear analysis of what happens, and be ready to re-evaluate the conditions. Always keep in mind the long-term considerations. Okay, so I might actually just finish by maybe two examples of licensing that I experienced in my previous life in Toulouse, in France. This is quite an astonishing example. Strangely enough, we talk about very long-term, more than 20 years, and it's weird because it's about software. And you know, of course, all the relationship in the license, depends strongly on the material you talk about. I mean, are you talking about patent? Are you talking about a short living technology? Usually software have got are supposed to have a very short life, because obsolescence is quite high and so on. In that case, it was a spin-off created in Toulouse more than 20 years ago, and they kept on using the initial softwares. It was a simulation companies, process simulation softwares. But after a while, after a long while, after more than 15 years, they said, look, the value of the original software has obviously decreased. And as Jeff said, they had built their own background after all these years. And so we got in negotiation to just decrease, to mitigate the royalties according to the time passing, which is quite logical. And we got pages and pages of this sort of tables. So it can request some sort of technical adaptation, but it's all feasible. And the second and last example I would like to show is for a spin-off. So this spin-off was created based on a university patent, and so we had negotiated the blue curve. Okay, so the royalties were supposed to begin in 2013 and to go increase, etc. And there was, very simply, as often for spin-off, there was a shift. There was a shift because of very good reasons. They didn't get the VC's money early enough. They got technical problems, they got production problems, but it was only shifted. It was only delayed. And so we just sat around the table and negotiated how the curve, how the evolution of the royalties would happen. And so we had several simulations and several negotiations, and you can see two of them, green one or the maroon one. And so this is just a very simple example, but you got to take the time and the energy to do so. And it's of no use to tell spin-off, look, you're supposed to pay this year and next year and in 2 years. And I mean, you're not going to fight to get the 50K euros. It is nothing, but it can be really a pain in the neck for the spin-off. And so it's important that you help actually the spin-off develop, and then you can get the money or big money. All right, so I think I'm going to stop now because I think I use also my time, and I'm ready for your questions, of course.
Thanks, Christophe. Thank you so much. I certainly recognize all of the points that you flagged as being the potential real life challenges. And I'm having a quick check, and thank you, Shiva, for encouraging audience to think about questions or challenges. I'm not so sure we have everybody's fingers typing fast enough just yet, so I don't see that we have anything specific that's completed and submitted yet, but I will keep an eye on that box. But in the meantime, I think as a panel, we can certainly challenge one another, or do you know what? Let's chuck the ball across to Shiva in the first instance. Shiva, do you have what resonated from Jeff, and what tricky question can you pose for Christophe?
Fortunately, I was prepared for this situation, so I tried to find my toughest question for our greatest speaker. So no, I wanted to make a follow-up question to Christophe before, because actually I really liked, he pointed out this topic of long-term versus one-shot relationship. And of course, we all should try to look for the long-term relationships. And I wanted to share a small piece of my experience as a background to ask the question, because actually what I've seen in my university at the Politecnico di Torino in this case is that over the last let's say 20 years, which I've not been here all the time, I'm here from a shorter time, quite a lot even now, anyhow. But the data I can retrieve, they are at least from 20 years. And what I've seen looking at those data is that as a general trend, what is happening is that the companies we are starting collaboration with tends to remain and to increase the amount of money they give us, they spend with us for the joint collaboration. And of course, that's not always the case. There are some that stops the collaboration. There are some other new ones coming. But as a general trend, I'm observing also when there is the big economic crisis between 2008 and 2010, we have had a general reduction of the amount of money we've been able to collect from the companies. But the more historical one, they stayed there and tended to spend more over the previous years. So this, in my opinion, this is somehow coherent with the idea that university industry collaboration discount a big lack, informative asymmetry, at least, because one of the main things when we try to enter into a new collaboration with a company is they don't trust you, basically, because especially if they are not very big corporations with very big R&D departments, the people you find on the other part of the table, they normally tend to do not understand completely what you are trying to sell them, and therefore they only they tend to be not trusting you. Okay, so I think that in the end we are somehow more capable of letting the people who start collaborating with us trust us on the long run, because actually what appears is that when we start collaborating, we stay together, much more than how much we are able to overcome this informative asymmetry issue at the very beginning. So I come to the question. My question is, how would you, which suggestion, which tips and tricks do you think we could try to put in place to overcome this initial lack of trust with the company, especially maybe toward small and medium companies who suffer more of this.
Sorry, okay. I would be happy to share the question with Jeff, but I can begin by answering. The thing is, it's really what I do experience now, because I left quite well organized and old university in Toulouse. Okay, so we had the right tools to do so. And I arrived in Luxembourg, which is a very young university, and we are facing this sort of questions right now. And Jeff knows exactly about that. I think there are several tools. One of the good tools I find is using the students, because with the students actually you can establish a link with small activities, short-term activities, not too complicated, and I get the feeling most of the companies know how to use students, internship, etc. So I like this idea of using students. The second tool I like very much also is to it is not directly linked to research. It's probably linked to bringing some expertise about information, bibliography, or having some very short-term consultancy or expertise, just trying to demonstrate to the company you can understand them and they can understand what you say. In France, we had this tech transfer regional centers, and they were also subsidized. They got public money in order to provide to small companies short-term activities. That could be maybe access to some equipment, characterization, some software, some expertise, short-term expertise. And I would go there, especially with some small companies with very, very precise and focused activities. Of course, if your first meeting with an SME is to say, look, I'm going to launch a PhD thesis, and in 3 years maybe you got some issue, some information. Okay, you're that. I don't want to speak too long because I'm quite talkative. So, Jeff,
I think comes down to trust, but trust is a very big word. Trust to do what? You know, yeah, and it could be part of the trust extends to the knowledge transfer, you know, research collaboration office. Do I trust the individuals in that office to be pragmatic and turn things around fast, be professional? Just as much as do I trust the academic to produce what they said they produce. So trust is a big word. And then I think the second big word phrase is mutual understanding. I mean, what Shiva, you're describing is, well, we trust these guys, but they really understand us. You know, they can almost take decisions for us because they understand the way we work. They understand what's important to us, both in terms of intellectual property, what we want to get out of this, and you know, they just get us. And more than that, we get them. So by working on the studentship that Christoph mentioned, or other small projects, then you develop this mutual understanding, and gradually you come to offer and produce work that is of interest and of use to the other party, both ways. And then thirdly, I think, is goodwill, which is the willingness to be generous, to actually be willing to not treat the first relationship as a win-lose, and to be able to show some flexibility to give, because the big things, the big relationships always start out small. I mean, not always, but virtually always start out small. Now, the irony of all this is that you have the knowledge transfer officer negotiating these things, and for them, this is some tiny little thing which doesn't seem to be important. Whereas they've got the bigger projects over there with far more money associated with it, and you've got this little thing that may need nowhere. But it's a seed, and seeds actually have to be tended far more than the big trees, which are fine, you know. But the incentives are all wrong. You know, oh, what's this little company here? Oh, why are they bothering with us? You know, they haven't got much power. Let's just assume they can't. You know, which is the opposite of what it takes to build trust in your ability to be a good partner. And if I may be provocative, the knowledge transfer research collaboration officer who does this on either side thinks they're being clever, but in fact they're being non-strategic, or they're being stupid.
Okay, I think that's it's also made me think, if I can just jump in here as well with I think my experience is exactly as you've all described, but I'm just wondering, and again, maybe this is interesting for the participants without being too controversial, and that is everything you've described, Jeff, is all pointing in the direction of willing partners, willing to negotiate, and as you've just said, there has to be competence and trust, and therefore something mutually successful. And as Christoph has ably demonstrated, that long-term relationship, even medium-term, long-term relationship, needs to maintain and build continually trust and everything. Again, reinforcing that all parties, whether it's the researchers, the tech transfer people in the middle, and the companies, are all facing the same direction because they want the relationship to work. Okay, so if I look back to my 25 years, you know, I have to say, although Christoph, you said at some point you had no negotiation fail because you didn't reach agreement on publications and confidentiality, I would totally agree that reaching a deal is actually always possible. I think I even said that in my opening remarks. But I have to say, rather sadly, that in my experience, for lots of different reasons, that sometimes that post-deal relationship, no matter how much trust there is and credibility, and good working balance and open communication and all the rest, all the good ingredients that you both have described as a good foundation, good relationships, something does change. And I have to say, it's usually, in my experience, of course, on the other side of the fence, where in fact that let's face the same direction and find a solution disappears, that desire disappears. And what you actually find is an organization on the other side that actually not only doesn't want to amend and fit a new model of royalties or whatever, they actually want to break the deal. You know, it's commercial reality is kicked in such a way that they want to stop and break things. So you find yourself in a situation where actually it's not the let's build something together, let's fix something together, but we're actually a little bit more in conflict. I'm kind of throwing this at you guys, but you know, whose role and what in your experience have been the effective roles of either different people close to the outside the, you know, how can we in reality move over and fix this in sort of way? Just throw the floor open.
I think the issue is that you have somebody who negotiates and then somebody who project manages. I mean, typically, once the agreement is signed by one of my research collaboration officers, negotiators, that's it. It's put in a filing cabinet, and that's the end of it. Right? So, and you know, it stays there to be archived a few years later, or it's pulled out if on the very, very rare occasion the two parties need to sue each other or something, or there's somebody which doesn't, it hardly ever happens. So in the tragedy is sometimes you've got these agreements that take ages and ages to negotiate, and it's done, and then they got put away, and first of all, nobody can remember what was agreed to. And secondly, nobody's following up on anything because the relationship is built on an ongoing basis. It isn't cemented as soon as you sign an agreement. So it's that lack of role of somebody to tend the relationship manager, which is often left to the academic, which exactly, you know, can be fine, but not always.
That's very important. Actually, it's all on the shoulders of the academic, and some people might get back to you and say, oh, remember 10 years ago I had worked with this company and now they're thinking about something new. And so it's very fragile and very heterogeneous because all the academics don't have the same relationship to the companies, and they don't have the same skills also. There is also a second comment that I'd like to do about the fact that in bigger companies you might talk to very, very different persons, and if you talk to R&D people, you don't talk to they are definitely not business people, they are not legal people, and you might have a different how do you say that, forces, strength within the company. I mean, and counteracting people. And I just take one example. Sometimes when negotiating a potential license, you discover that your R&D people, your R&D friends in the company are quite worried because the company says, okay, this money, the royalties money, will be taken from the R&D budget and not from the business, which is crazy. And so it provides some tension, of course, because you might be in good relationship according to science and research, but if the royalties negotiation is going to take on their budget, that's a problem. So know exactly with whom you have to talk and who you get to convince before the negotiation and afterwards.
I think that too many of us have been trained in the getting to yes methodology, which assumes win-win-win the whole way, and you don't want to walk away. And you know, the favorite counterbalance to that, my one anyway, is the book called Start With No by Jim Camp, which is exactly what it says on the can. You know, if things aren't what you like, then you just say no. Yeah, and our problem is that we are afraid to say no, even with a smile on our face, and we often don't even think we have the power to say no because we're going against what we know the academic wants, which is usually often money at any cost, especially if they have a team to keep going. But the failure there, I think, is the research collaboration officer's ability to have frank conversations with the academic. You know, usually there's this, not quite scared of it. And of course, our people don't know the technology either. But to be able to phone up the academic and say, look, you know, I can agree to some of this, but I think you're a damn fool to do this. They're taking advantage of you. You know, I've done deals where one of your colleagues got much better terms than you did. If you want to agree to this thing, I'm not going to stand in the way. It's your funeral, and have that intelligent conversation with the academic so that you and they can both agree that let's just start with no.
If I can follow up, and then I've seen that we got a first question from the audience. So I think we must take it, but I would like to ask just one more follow-up question to this last words from Jeff, because it reconnects also to, in my head, to the theme of incentive, which he mentioned just 2 minutes ago. So having within the TTO people with the right competencies and profile and professional career to be able to have this face-to-face chat, also talking about the technical details with the researchers, means you need high-profile people. We all are tech transfer people, so we all think that tech transfer people are great, brilliant, intelligent, the smartest people in the world, no? But apart from the funny part of this sentence, I really do believe that technology transfer competencies are very, very, very strong and particular in some ways. And so you need the right incentives to have the right people. So I was just wondering, if Jeff and Christoph, you can just maybe just share with us your experience. What sort of incentive schemes were in place in the place where you have worked, or what do you think about this topic?
Jeff, how do you recruit the best people, and how do you keep them?
And how to keep them?
How do you keep them?
We had the question. We had the question in France when we created the accelerating tech transfer companies. We took this occasion to pay them better, very simply. I know it's a poor answer, but
like, do you also can give them success incentives, like relate them to the agreements or something like that?
No, you can't do that. There's people have lost their jobs over promising that sort of thing. I mean, they are service providers and they get they're professionals, so they get paid that fee. It's only when you move into sales and things that it gets into incentive based. And of course, they can never share in any revenue sharing, because that's a very straight line there between inventors and non-inventors. I guess, I mean, first of all, in hiring the people, that time when I took over the office, it was in crisis because virtually everybody had left. All right, and so we had to rebuild pretty quickly. And I'm going to offend an awful lot of people here, but this type of research collaboration agreement, a lot of it does not require a fully qualified lawyer. It really doesn't. In fact, sometimes they get so cute about the minutiae of the agreement that they get in the way. All right. The best hire I ever made was a guy who used to be, he took legal training, don't get me wrong, but it was at a understanding contract type training. And he was a chef, and I hired him on the basis that if he could manage a restaurant, large restaurant. And I said, on the basis that if you can manage chefs, you can manage academics. All right, and so it came. So these types of people have a degree of confidence that they can manage these, I'm going to say prima donnas, but people who are clever people, gifted people, is important. There's something else though around the incentives. First of all, you don't let them be blamed, right? You stand up behind them, and as part of that, as a director, you kind of need, and I'm not saying I was great at this, but you kind of need to know what's going on and have overall oversight of a relationship on each of these collaborations. There was a good colleague of mine, Tom Hockaday, and he and I were at Oxford, known each other for years, and he and I were talking at an event, wondering why it was that tech transfer officers were so often disliked. All right, why did it always seem to happen like this, that we would seem to get in the way? And we compared ourselves to a professional services company, somebody like Deloitte or KPMG, and we observed there that as soon as a new client, aka academic, was taken on, a managing partner was put in charge of that relationship, and then they delegated it down to somebody who did the day-by-day work. But we kept, or the managing partner was overall in responsibility for this thing and could always be referred to if something was going wrong, and contacted. In our profession, we seem to work from the bottom up, and they contact somebody fairly lowly in the organization, and then if things go wrong, it escalates. And sometimes, you know, I used to see these things that have been bubbling on underneath for months sometimes, and they came to me, and I thought, well, this is just bloody stupid. You know, why have we been wasting all this energy? The answer to me is, it just needs a decision to be made, and everybody's scared to make the decision. So I just get on the phone to the academic and say, look, this is completely bonkers. Why don't we just agree on that? And he said, well, yeah, that's fine, let's agree. So I just say, well, you now have permission to agree that. And everybody says, whoa, thank goodness for that. That's what we wanted to do, but we didn't think we could. And so we have this inverted thing where the problems only escalate, whereas a proper professional services company, the lead client service partner is in charge and having oversight of that relationship from the beginning and delegated down. And I'm sure that is one, you know, Tom and I discussed this, and we are sure that that's one of the biggest reasons why these things happen.
I want to comment on this. This is very true, and I spend my time as a director of a TTO having people coming with me with the right solutions. They knew exactly what to do, and they just needed the, you know, the final yes. And I said, yeah, yes. I mean, you know what to do. Just do it, and don't lose time. So it's very true, Jeff. And the second thing is that we don't celebrate enough. I mean, I've been always working with overwhelmed people, you know, signing hundreds of contracts, negotiate, and they all of them were already always in the process of negotiating 30, 40, 50 contracts at the same time, always, okay? And when a contract was signed, nothing happened. So I ended up buying a bell, you know, and I had the people ring the bell in the corridors just to say, well, one other sign. Well, we don't have real incentives for these people, for our colleagues, but I think we should be more positive about the recognition of the work and share it also with the researchers. I failed in that, but I tried to organize also some sort of regular meetings, sharing a coffee or beer with researchers also, and just telling them, oh, look, this last semester we ended up with a very good relationship with such and such companies, and we signed good contracts, and you know, just seeing the positive way.
And no, I'll add on that. That's lovely. I love the bell. Every time the trade is done, I think we should extend that to, we're ringing the bell because this research collaboration officer said no to a deal that would have been against everybody's interests. So we've walked away from one. Ring the bell, you know, because otherwise all we're rewarding is the behaviour that says we have to give in.
Great, thanks guys. And just before we quickly jump into the question that we come back to, which is a very rather specific one and a very interesting one, I think the final point to that, incentivizing and keeping people, is recognition and support. And some of that support certainly comes in training and connecting, because I think I look on this activity as a vocation. There are lots of events, you do it because you're drawn to it, and if you're helped, supported, and empowered to learn better and connect with others, then that's also an incentive to stay in this particular corner. Anyway, let's jump into the question. We have somebody asking a question, which has actually come to something Christoph was talking about, which is one of the things that very often happens over time, that real life changes what was agreed, or the need to change what was agreed at the start. So the question is all about royalties, and maybe the example you gave showed a shift in time, but there's a question here which is asking the question, so over time, do royalties, are they always mitigated, suggesting they always go down? In other words, the financial package over time goes down, or are there examples where the renegotiation, shall we call it, leads to an increase in the royalties? So the question is here, so do the royalties always mitigate and never increase? It's a kind of abstract question. Well, it's not really abstract, but it's a succinct question. But obviously, you know, the expectation, the example you gave was SMEs. So Christoph, the floor is yours. You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. There are two ways to preview the future. Okay, one of them is within the contract, and you can have very classical ways to do that, providing that actually you say the royalties rate is going to decrease, depending on also can depend on the turnover of you got many mechanisms, and that would be within the contract. Okay. Usually there is a clause saying, oh, if things change, we can talk about this. I've never experienced an increased renegotiations. Okay, maybe you have. If you have, Laura, oh, congrats! I would like to hear about this. And then the second way to change things is when you got to renegotiate the contract. This is the example that I showed, and this is very rarely, again, because the company is doing so well that they want to give more money to the universities. Very rare. So this is personal experience. So
the bigger. I mean, come to the ASTP licensing course. There's the plug, because we've got a whole session on what happens when things change, right? But it boils down to, is this something that was known at the time? In which case, you know, why would we renegotiate? I mean, you know, it was known at the time. You're asking us to unilaterally give way. Why would we do that? We might say, all right, well, we can redistribute somehow. You know, you haven't got enough money. So if you haven't got enough money to pay at the moment, then we accept this and delay the payment. It'll turn into an interest-bearing loan, or maybe it would turn into shares, because all shareholders have to take the pain. You know, everybody has to take the pain, share that out if it's known at the time. If, however, it turns out that the university, or rather the academic, didn't disclose things that he should have disclosed, or overrepresented the technology, then clearly you know, you are in a position where you probably have to do something about it, and renegotiate, and that's likely to be down. But do remember that the beauty of royalty payments is that it is a risk-sharing mechanism built in. You know, the more you make, the more there is to share out. If nothing's made, then nothing's shared out. So it has an inbuilt buffer type of, you know, risk sharing built in. That's what a royalty is.
There is a specific issue with the minima guarantees for exclusivity, and what I never accepted is a big company saying, look, we got to renegotiate because I don't want to pay the minima because the business is not so good. And this is exactly what the minima are made for, assuring that the company is going to provide a good effort to develop the business. If they don't, that's their problem. So we have to get the minima royalties.
And just add two very quick comments. One is on the minimum. Certainly when we were negotiating, agreeing what the minimum was, or the minimum royalty payments would be, I always asked the company to give a guesstimate as to the time scale and a reasonable amount of income, or not income, but rather the base on which royalties would be paid. So we'd already agreed it would be a 2% or a 10% or whatever the royalty rate was, but for the minimum, what would that be? So we would agree with them, and they would tell us what they thought their baseline income level would be, and we would agree that actually the minimum would be set at 70% of what they thought the minimum was going to be. So we already negotiated openly anyway, so that's a slight mechanism. The examples I was going to put my hand up about why mitigation of royalties and when there are increases, the scenarios for mitigation is all, as you said, Jeff, is about the negotiation power, the balance of power, what is triggering the renegotiation. Is it that things are going less well or whatever? And I have to say the examples where we've had renegotiation where royalties have not mitigated down the way, but have in fact increased, have been because in a way what we're talking about, Christophe, is revisiting the contractual terms. And what's actually happened is that the licensee has wanted more. And when I say more, they have wanted more rights, user rights that you talked about at the beginning, Jeff. So basically we had a license deal, which was an exclusive license deal, where in fact the licensee at some point 5-6 years down the line suddenly realized there was an additional way they could actually generate income, and they absolutely wanted to sub-license. a whole field and a whole geography, and that was not on the table at the start. It was not even what they wanted at the start. So we were happy to renegotiate in a way that meant that, of course, we were happy for them to be able to sub-license, but we restructured both the license rates that they would give us, so they were still going to be active and generate and pay us royalties, but that we would get a percentage, of course, of the sub-licensing deal that they would do. So at the end of the day, the whole royalty base or bases multiplied, so we ended up with an increase in royalties over time, and it was triggered by the fact that the company wasn't able to deliver on the development that it originally agreed. In other words, it couldn't honour the exclusive commitments it had undertaken in the exclusive license, but they then solved that with a sub-licensing strategy.
Whenever there's a request like this, the first thing is seek more information.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then you get the numbers and just work out what the argument is and bottom out the argument, and then talk about how the numbers might be rearranged. And
exactly.
That's one of the very first lessons I remember from some guy, a British technology group, who had done all the all the NMR type negotiations. He said, first of all, go in and work out the rights and the wrongs of the situation, and don't talk about numbers. And once you bottom them out, then you can talk about the structure of what has to be changed, and then you talk about the numbers. So that's it. And it turns into non-confrontation, because you're no longer horse trading. Should it be 4%? Should it be 5%? You're going down and saying, well, no, until you convince me. So go ahead and argue. What would you do in my position?
Yeah, and using exactly the same approach to build the original deal, and having the guidance notes a bit like the Lambert guidance notes as to why the numbers were reached as they were, so that future generations can understand where they came from, so they can be referred to. I'm conscious, Shiva, that it's, at least according to my clock, it's like 11:59 or thereabouts. So I don't know whether we're coming close to a point where we need to draw to a close. Clearly, we're having fun.
We'll find out when the numbers start dropping off.
That's right. So I don't know whether we want a final shout out for if there's any other unanswered questions, or the other critical thing is, of course, that we have shared email addresses and all sorts. So we can look on this, I'm sure, individually as an open invitation to pick up questions, not just in the context of today and this morning, but anytime afterwards. What do you think, Shiva? Shall we?
Yeah, I think we can go to close. I think we are having now some 65 people still connected, so we reached hype around 80. So I think it seems it was a good one. I didn't have any doubt about that, but as the matter of fact, it seems it has been like that. So I don't know. I'm not seeing if Giuseppe has been able to join us back, but apparently not. He's not in the staff list in my control panel, so he had to move to another meeting. So I think I will take the responsibility on behalf of Netval to thank you, Laura, Jeff, and Christophe, for your participation, and ASTP for having collaborated with us for the organization of this first webinar within the TechShare Day 2021. I would say first edition, because we are planning to have another one in the fall, but that will be discussing matter of discussion for the last webinar on Friday. I would like to also thank a lot Loredana Guglielmetti from the Patent and Trademark Office. I know she's still with us, even though unfortunately we can still not see her, but thank you very much, Loredana, for being here with us. And of course to the Patent and Trademark Office for being our partner in the whole Knowledge Share and TechShare Day initiative. Big thanks also to Federico and Gloria and Andrea, who are the part of my team in organizing all of this, but they will have tough times still over these 3 days, so we will thank them at the very end with a lot of applauses. And so I think we have to close now. It's just the closing of the first out of 9 webinar. There will be 8 more. 7 of them will be much more technical into the topic of the environmentally sound technologies, which is the main topic of this edition of the Texture Day. So please enjoy. I hope everyone liked this session, and stay tuned. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the invitation. Bye.
Thank you very much,
Jeff.
everyone.
Ciao, Christophe. Ciao, Laura.
Bye just now.
Bye.